What's up? San Diego, how are you? Thank you.
So Tony, take us back to the beginning. You're here in San Diego, your hometown. How did it all get started?
Well, I grew up in Tirasana. Shout out Tirasana. And my older brother was a surfer, and he started skating because skating was kind of an extension of surfing at the time, the late 70s. And I just picked up one of his old boards one day and started using it as transportation. And I didn't have some great epiphany then. I just enjoyed that it got me to school faster. And I wasn't old enough to go to the skate park at the time. I think I was 9 years old. And then when I turned 10, I got to finally go to the skate park, which was called Oasis Park, right under the 163 overpass on the 8. And when I went there and I saw people literally flying out of swimming pools, that's when I had my wow moment that I was like, I want to do that. I want to fly like those guys. That's all I care about.
So at what point did you decide, I'm going to take my passion, my hobby, and turn it into a business?
That came years later. I didn't feel like I was choosing a career for myself because skating was really small at the time. It wasn't very popular. And I came to find out that as I was getting more serious about it, it was getting even less popular. So it wasn't like I was really making money. I think it was much later when I started to make pretty good money, and then it all faded very quickly because skating fell in and out of style. And I found myself with 2 mortgages, a son on the way, and an income that was getting cut by half every month because it was all based on royalties. And that's when, I think that's when I decided I wanted to be in the business of skateboarding, just because I didn't want to leave it behind. And I thought that my career as a pro skater was ending, so I started a skate company in 1992. And it was a weird time to start a skate company because, like I said, skating was getting less popular then, but at the same time, I had seen it come and go twice, and I believed it was going to come back around, and I wanted to be in control of a brand.
So there's so many athletes and entertainers over the years that they have their career, and then they kind of fade away. You've been a name that we've all seen, heard, watched from video games, endorsement deals, investments. You've done so many different things. How do you think that from a personal brand perspective, you stuck around for all this time?
Well, I like to think that I walk the walk. That's the bottom line. Like, doing all these things I love doing anything inside of skateboarding and promoting skateboarding and doing endorsements and stuff. But at the end of the day, I just want people to think of me as a skater, and that I prove myself as a skater in that sense, so that I would be able to validate those things and justify having those kinds of endorsements. But I can't discount the fact that our video game was hugely popular, and my name became synonymous with video games and skateboarding in connection to that. And I'm really hugely proud of it. I'm proud of the attention it brought skateboarding, and obviously how well it did, but also the authenticity of it. And I think that is the core of what I do in terms of, if I'm going to present skateboarding, if I'm going to align with any sort of business partnership, it has to represent skateboarding in the most authentic way. And I have to fight for those approvals sometimes, but it's worth it.
So at the time when the video game deal happened, they offered you $500,000, and you in turn asked for royalties instead. That's a big decision, right? Like,
yeah. Well, right around the time of the first game release, which was 1999, I was proud of what we had created, but I really thought that the only people that would buy the game or that would enjoy the game were skaters themselves, because skating wasn't that popular at the time. And home video games weren't as popular either, so I was just happy that we made something that I knew skaters would appreciate and maybe inspire them to buy a PlayStation. But as the release started to get closer, I think Activision felt the buzz about the quality of the game and the rise of interest in skateboarding, so they called me and they offered me $500,000 buyout of future royalties. And I had just closed escrow on a house in Carlsbad, and I was, for the first time, comfortable with my mortgage payments. And I felt like I was in a pretty good place in terms of what my future held. And so when they called me, I mean, it was absurd for them to say $500,000. Like, in that time of my life, someone saying $500,000 sounds like a gazillion billion dollars. I had never even considered that much money or that I would ever make that kind of money. And but like I said, I was in a pretty good place financially, and I turned it down because I thought, why not bet on myself and the quality that we've created of this game? And for sure, it was the best financial decision of my life.
Yeah, that game went on to do like $1.4 billion in sales. I was at least a couple $1,000s of it because I love that game.
I didn't get all that money, but I did well.
So for someone that's an athlete, and whether it's UFC, boxing, skating, surfing, etc., what can they do to make themselves stand out from the thousands and thousands or hundreds of thousands of other competitors in the space?
Well, I think with the rise of social media, it is possible to be successful without having to compete, and that's something that was not the case when I was younger. The only way you could get noticed, especially in the world of skateboarding, was to compete. And at one point, I was getting burned out on competition, and I actually told my sponsor at the time that this is killing me. Like it's kind of sucking the fun out of what I do. And he literally said to me, "If you're not competing, how do you expect to make a living?" And I think now you can create a brand, you can create a direction, you can be very creative in your world and make content that people be interested in, and never have to set foot on a competition course.
So ClickUp is a productivity app. You get bombarded with so many different things, from deals and offers, investments and pitches and events and all the things that are coming at you in your life. How do you decide for yourself on a time basis what you're willing to get involved in?
I think it's more about what I think will have the most reach and the most impact. And so it's not always the most financially viable option, but it's probably the one that's more fun and interesting to me. And whatever it is, I mean, the bottom line is I want to promote skateboarding. I want to promote skateboarding, the awareness for skateboarding, the need for public facilities for skating, public skate parks. And so whatever will feed that is what I'll choose to do.
And so with the Tony Hawk Foundation, can you tell us about what that does for skate parks?
Sure. Well, it used to be called the Tony Hawk Foundation. Now it's called the Skatepark Project. But basically, we are helping to develop public skate parks in underserved areas. We are coming up on 20 years next year and have given away over $10 million. We have funded over 600 parks that are built already and over 1,000 that are coming. Thank you. It's definitely my proudest work, and there are plenty of projects here in San Diego as well that we worked on. But I grew up near one of the last skate parks in San Diego. The first one I mentioned, Oasis, closed very early on, but I got lucky that my parents had moved to North County by then, and I grew up near Del Mar Skate Ranch, which was right near the fairgrounds. And that was my home away from home, and it was never lost on me how lucky I was to have that place and to have that sense of community and to have that salvation. And so when I was able to have a voice that could affect change, my first priority was to build more skate parks, because I want kids, not that I'm trying to, we're not making training grounds or training facilities. It's more that the kids who have found skateboarding that maybe feel disenfranchised by team sports will have a place that they feel like they belong, and that the city has provided for them instead of kicking them out of every place.
So another question from a time perspective, how do you juggle everything from family life? You have to put your dad hat on. You have the business life. You got to put your business hat on. Like, how do you juggle your time?
Like I said, I just try to choose the things that I think will have the most impact and that I'm more passionate about. Any event in San Diego, I'm down because I don't have to get on a plane. So here we are. But yeah, that's it. It's really, that's probably the biggest challenge in my life, is trying to prioritize what I should be doing and how I can still be effective as a father. Luckily, between my wife and I, we have 6 kids. 5 are out of the house. 3 are in college. So we did it for the most part. So thank you, I guess. Don't look at their grades. No, but that's it, and I think that I got caught up in the storm of fame and success and schedule through the years, and learned how to really how to organize that and make that less of a priority. Luckily, in my later years, because I'm still able to do it.
So the team that's around you, how do you choose who you let into your circle to work with you?
If I feel like they have the same value system and that they have the same sense of passion for growing skateboarding, for making it more accessible, making it more inclusive, and that's pretty much it. I'm pretty transparent about the things I do and the causes, and staying true to my values, and my team understands that. And if you were to go to my office, I can't even define what anyone does because everyone's just doing everything, including me.
So from an investment perspective, you've invested into Nest and Blue Bottle and some really great companies. Is that something that you're actively out there looking for, or you're just kind of cherry-picking deals along the way?
A little bit of both. I definitely get sometimes special offers to investing in companies at a lower level because they want me involved. So I feel very lucky in that, like Liquid Death, where the minimum investment is millions of dollars, and that's not where I'm going with it. But I'm excited to be part of it, and yeah, I can't say I'm some sort of Shark Tank angel investor. It's just more if something comes to me and I feel like it's really interesting, or that it has a lot of potential, or it's a technology I love, then I'm in.
So when you get bombarded by people, whether it's deals, questions for your time, money, and energy, how do you protect your time? How do you say no?
It's hard. I think that if you have enough success, or if you have a drive of doing something and you really are following your passion, you can navigate what to say no to. But a lot of times, if you're just trying to grow it, you can overextend yourself. And so I don't have the magic answer to that. All I can say is if it feels right, I'm into it. And a lot of times, something is just too difficult. It's going to take up too much of my time or too much of my bandwidth. I've got to let it go. And there have been plenty of those in recent months and years.
So for someone that's out there watching that has a hobby or passion as an athlete, when did they determine, or when would you say to them, okay, maybe it is time to take it into a career? Like, how did they go from passion, amateur, professional?
Well, I think that if you're doing what you truly love doing and you want to keep doing it, not because you think it's going to make you rich or famous, but because you just love doing it, and at some point you do end up making a living at it, I feel like that is right there as living the dream. Even if it's just in a pocket of scraping by, at least you're going to love what you do for work and love what you do, love going to work. I think that if you want to know from an athlete perspective with being a skater and turning pro, that's a different, like there are all kinds of different trajectories to that. One is through competing. Another is just through doing something unique, gaining a following, creating content, and getting a buzz. And I mean, the turning professional in skateboarding these days is much different than it was. When I turned professional, I had reached the top of the amateur ranks, and there was a competition in LA in Whittier at the skate park, and I was filling out the entry form, and I filled out my name and address, and then there was a box that said AM and a box that said pro, and I clicked pro. I checked pro. We were online, and that was it. There was no fanfare. There was no celebration or champagne or guarantee for anything. I literally went from competing against mostly guys my age to guys that were about 5 or 6 years older than me for a first prize of $100. That was it. So these days, being pro basically means that you have your name on a skateboard, and if a company believes that you have enough buzz and that there is a demand for your products, they'll do that. But it doesn't mean you had to compete or really do anything. I mean, there's some people that have turned pro in skating just based on their merit in other fields.
So there's amateur, there's pro, there's champions, and then there's legends. What do you think is that thing that makes people go from pro to champion to Hall of Fame?
Well, I'd like to think it's perseverance, and the idea that usually the window of a pro skater is very short-lived because you only have so many years when you're really doing your best. And at some point, your skills start to fade or your interest fades. And I think that if you're willing to push through that and maybe shift gears do it in a different style or whatnot, you can make it beyond that sort of sweet spot of what people think is like 4 or 5 years. And there are a few that have done it. I'd like to think that I've done it. I mean, I'm still a pro skater. I'm 53, so there aren't a lot of us that can say that right now. Thank you. Thank you. Are you clapping because I'm still alive or because I skate? But I think that that's just it. It's really, it's more like if you had the perseverance and the determination to keep taking it, but also to keep pushing yourself, and those things are not easy.
So you did one of the craziest moves of all time, right? When people were kind of capped at 360, then 720, and then you went for the 900. Like, talk to us about the mindset of fear going out, doing something that nobody else has ever done in history.
Well, definitely through the years of skating, I wanted the drive to me was learning new tricks. That's always been the passion that drove me. Like, when I was 12 years old, I learned a trick that no one had actually done before. I did it like halfway up the bowl. I managed to turn my board and I was going backside and turn my board under my feet. It's a backside varial. But I remember the feeling when I made it. It wasn't like I was moving the needle, but I remember what it brought to me. And that's the feeling I've been chasing ever since. So eventually getting to do a 900, I mean, I learned 540s in 1984. I learned a 720 in 1985. And then the very next year, I started trying 900s. They were hopeless, but I was trying them. And at some point, I kind of gave up on it because I'd gotten hurt so many times trying it. And I think that the idea that you know it's possible is what keeps driving you. It's a lot easier to get to something if you know it's been done before or that someone else has done it. But to do something that hasn't been done like that, you just have to believe it's possible. And I would always visualize how it could happen. But like I said, through the years, it was just so many failures. And when I got to finally make one, it was at 99X Games. And it's funny because they had that event. It was a best trick event. And in that year, they had a few best trick events at various skate competitions. But it was always just an afterthought. It was like, competition's over. You guys go out, go crazy for the next half hour. Try your hardest stuff. Everyone's just bailing. It's just kind of a mess. And then a couple people make tricks, and they get the prizes. And so when they said they're going to do that at X Games, I was like, it's such a shit show to do that on live TV. It's just going to be bails. And something happened that night. It wasn't just me. With all the skaters, where they stepped up, and everyone was making their hardest tricks. And my hardest trick that I had planned was a varial 720, which is basically a double spin in the air while turning my board an extra 180. That was literally the hardest trick I had done at that point in my life. And I made it early on in the competition. And where do I go from there? I guess 900, because that's the next challenge that I had set for myself. But I really didn't think it was going to happen. And then at some point during my attempts, I realized that I'm either going to make this tonight or they're going to take me in an ambulance. And those were the only two outcomes that would have happen.
There was an old famous story, remember the 4-minute mile, where nobody could ever get there, and then finally one guy did it, and then like 5, 10, 15 people started doing it the very next year.
Yeah, just a couple months later, Giorgio Sattoni in Italy made a 900, and then a couple months after that, Sandro Diaz made a 900 in Brazil. So absolutely, you're right.
So what do you think that is about the mindset of why do we need that? Why do we need that benchmark to know someone else could do it? Like, you didn't need it. You just thought that you could try to pull it off.
Yeah, but I've definitely had other tricks where I think, I don't know if that's possible, and I see someone else do it, and I go, well, I guess it is. So I'll start trying it. So I understand that. I think it's just more that the possibilities is much more tangible when you've seen it done by someone.
And so now, 2021, going into 2022, what drives you to stay so active? What drives you to still do brands and speaking and events and your products and all these different things?
I can't believe how far skateboarding has come, and I'm so thankful to still be part of it and to be advocating for it, promoting it. I mean, I got to be one of the lucky few that was in Tokyo for the inaugural skateboarding in the Olympics, and I walked onto the course and it was surreal. No one was there. I mean, only the competitors, not even their families were there. And I walked out just to go look at it and realized that no one's watching me, and dropped into the park course without permission. I was the first one to ride it. Like that, all of that just seems surreal to me, that skateboarding has come that far, that it's on a world stage, that it's so inclusive, it's so diverse. And kids nowadays, I mean, I'm sure a lot of you have kids, they choose to skate as readily as they choose team sports. It's weirder now to have a kid that isn't interested in skating on any level than it is to have a kid that dabbles in skating. And when I was a kid, it was the furthest thing from cool.
So for our final question, for everyone here watching in person and live virtually, what is the one piece of advice you'd give them going into the next year?
Follow your passion. You're going to be happy you did. That's all I can say. I'm living proof of that. You know, even if it's not tried and tested, or if it seems like it's risky, you got to stick with it. I'm not saying give up everything else, but definitely stick with it, because you'll be happy in the end that you did.
Ladies and gentlemen, in person, and the 45,000 of you watching virtually with us, please give it up for Mr. Tony Hawk.
Thanks, you guys. Stay classy.